So, whoever you are, thank you so much. So, those who've been with us the past number of weeks, we are going through Emunah, faith in Hashem. And we covered a lot of topics on our journey together. Tonight, we're going to discuss something which, I have many videos on YouTube. Don't look them up now. Hundreds, actually at this point, online, thousands of classes. I have two videos that reached, I won't call viral because I'm not famous, but got a lot more views than I usually get. I can get anywhere from, 200 to maybe a few thousand. Two videos went into the hundreds of thousands. One of them is me meeting Kanye West. No, that never happened, I'm kidding. That never, ever happened. And that's okay as well. No, one of them was actually a meeting with Jehovah's Witnesses at my front door and a debate with them, which is mostly watched by non-Jews. The other video, which I haven't looked at it in like a couple of years, but last time I looked at it, had maybe 250,000 views, is a video of me teaching people how to, I wanted to take a guess what I'm doing in that video, teaching people how to date. That gets a lot of views. Date ratio gets a lot of views, yeah.
Speak Hebrew.
Speak Hebrew. So not speak Hebrew, but read Hebrew. But I've got many read Hebrew practice guides. One particular read Hebrew guide is way out in front more than all the others. And that is how to read the Shema. Why that is, I don't know. But that one video, I get messages and comments, and usually the comments on my videos are terrible. We hate you, this guy's not a rabbi, he's not even Jewish, whatever. But this one, people, Jews and non-Jews, I have Muslims and Christians writing to me, thanking me, I did a little explanation. What is it about this one thing called the Shema that speaks to so many people? So we're going to talk about this. We're going to go very deep tonight. I did a lot of research on tonight's discussion. And we're going to talk about Emunah through prayer, specifically through looking at the Shema. Because there's one thing we Jews do a lot, more than anyone else, but the other mitzvah I should say, it's pray. Now to pray in Hebrew is lehitpalel. Lehitpalel, it's wrong to translate it as pray. Because pray isn't even a Jewish word. Pray means to, talk to God, which is a good thing in and of itself. Lehit palel is actually made up of two parts. Lehit and pilel. Do you know what pilel means, or pilili? A judge, yeah, very nice. To judge. What is lehit? You say lehitraot. What are you saying with lehitraot? What are you actually saying? Hey, litrot. What are you saying when you say that?
It's reflexive.
It's reflexive, yeah. It means I will. Lehitraot means I will see you later. So lehit palel, to pray, there's actually 10 expressions for prayer, but this is the main one. Means I'm going to lehit judge, which means judge myself. There's something reflective I'm meant to be doing. Now, prayer for most of us as we grow up and easily become adults, and it is for me to this day, is basically a list of requests. God, I want this. I don't want any of that. Give me more of this. I don't want any of that. And that's a part of prayer. It's called bakasha. But there's another part of prayer that we need to focus on this evening. And we're going to use the Shema to open that door for us. And that is to reflect on who we are and just to connect to God through Emunah. So once again, let's just collect what we said so far. And that's a good word, collect. I'll explain why in a moment. We said that prayer isn't just asking for stuff, it's reflecting. What am I doing? I'm asking for this stuff, but what am I going to do with it? What's the purpose of it? How am I going to react? Right, when I was 10 years old, I was praying to become a professional tennis player. I'm still not over it. I still think it's a possibility. I may go professional. I stink, but it's a possibility. And then we ask for a list of things we want, bikes and friendships and relationships and what else we pray for. And that's all well and good. But that's not the entire purpose of to fill out prayer. Prayer is not just a means to an end. It's an end in of itself. And the big prayer that we always talk about is the Amidah, which gets a lot of press because it's so long. But Shema is a Torah mitzvah to pray twice a day. And there's something about that prayer that is going to connect us to emunah, to faith, more than anything else we do or say. That's going to be my proposition this evening. Let's spend 20-30 minutes just double-clicking on this, because one thing I know for sure is you're going to say the Shema a lot, and God willing, inshallah, each and every one of you are going to lie down with your kids, please God, every single night and say the Shema with them. It's worth knowing what the heck you're saying. Right? You're going to be doing it. You might as well know what you're actually saying. So let's focus on it. There's a great story, a very moving story, which I've read in a number of places, which makes me think it is true, about a rabbi called Rabbi Eliezer Silva. I remember reading this many years ago. Rabbi Eliezer Silva was, anybody know who he was, by the way? He did something great for the Jewish people, something incredible. After the Second World War, he went to Europe to find Jewish children. Where were these Jewish children? Many of them were deposited in nunneries, in convents, and into homes of non-Jewish people. As babies, many people knew them when we rounded up. They took their babies, they deposited them with non-Jewish neighbors, thinking after the war, I'll go pick them up. What happened was, most of them died, the parents couldn't go back. And many of these people were not willing to give up these babies that had been living with them for 4 or 5 years. You are aware of this. There's many American Jewish people and European Jewish people who actually are what we call tinuk shenishba, kidnapped children. It's actually halachic status. It used to be these to come and actually steal babies. But this is something, I think Madeleine Albright, right, remember her? Right, she actually falls into this category of someone who was deposited into a non-Jewish family and didn't find out, which I find hard to believe, but didn't find out she was Jewish too much later on. There's many such people. So this rabbi decided to travel to Europe to capture and regain these babies and bring them back to Jewish communities in America, in Israel, wherever they went to after the war. But you got a problem. You walk into a nunnery and a convent, and there's hundreds of kids, because many of them got displaced. And let's say there's 100 kids. You know, see those pictures of those movies, like all those beds lined up. And he looks out, and how do you know which one's Jewish and which one isn't Jewish? And they're 7, 8 years old. You can't even ask them, can you? Because they got put there when they were 2, 3 years old. They'd forgotten who their parents were. So what exactly did he do? And he went from, and they said, oh, this one's Jewish. And he went, no, you're not Jewish. He said, this was Jewish. No, that one's not Jewish. But this one's Goldberg. It's a non-Jewish Goldberg. And many of them actually changed their names. So what exactly did they do? I know you want to say. I'm going to say. It's my talk. You can have another time. What he did was something very, very powerful. He stood at the front of the room, in front of all these kids, and he said, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And some kids did this. And some kids said, Baruch Hashem Kavod Machoto Le'olam Va'ed. And he said, that's a Jew, she's coming with me. That's a Jew, he's coming with me. And he ended up saving thousands of Jewish lives and making them part of the Jewish community through that one statement. How powerful is that? Right? You knew this, right? It's unbelievable. Can you imagine that feeling of identifying a Jew and one way to do it? Yeah?
Well, I have another question. There's a similar story about everyone getting together in Boston, like years later, finds them they're later in life, not as kids, in their 70s, and there was another Jewish song that they would sing to them, and it was the same exact story that you just told.
Same idea.
But it's a beautiful story.
You know, I'll tell you something, it shows how deep that prayer gets inside people, inside children. You don't know what you're doing. Literally, you don't know what you're doing. And most Jews don't know what they're doing when they just say those 6 words. The Amida, there's a lot going on in there. But 6 words that are going to change your relationship and your children's relationship, maybe your grandchildren, with God as well. Let's double click on this and go a little bit deeper. And we may try something a little unusual tonight, which I've never done before. With your permission. If you're comfortable. Some people are not comfortable, I guess, doing such a thing. But I want to try a little experiment a little bit later. But I have to give you some background before we try to do this together. It's going to be a little weird, but let's try. We'll see what happens. Okay. So it's the first prayer we say to our children in the morning. If a person has the merit, it's the last words that leave our mouths before we die. It is the ultimate declaration of faith, of emunah in God. One of the most famous stories of Jewish history, which is mentioned in the Gemara and Midrashim and elsewhere, is Rabbi Akiva, who spent his entire life, well, not his entire life, but at least 2/3 of his life saying the Shema and never feeling comfortable that he had the right kavanah, the right intention. We'll talk about what that means a little bit later. When he was saying the words Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, eventually he was taken by the Romans and killed for the crime of teaching Torah publicly. He didn't care. They dragged him. They gave him a violent, horrible death. He's one of the martyrs of Jewish history. They combed the flesh from his body. Let's not just talk about it. It's a Tisha B'Av discussion, not for a happy Monday night. But as he was dying, he recited the words of Shema, and he saw the letters floating. It was an amazing experience, and he said, finally, I'm able to do this mitzvah properly. What, never before? Right, thousands of students, thousands of tefillah. He never said it before. What was lacking from all the previous Shemas that he didn't get to that final one that he did get? That's a good question. I'm not sure the answer. But there's a lot going on in this prayer, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. I want to talk about the first word tonight, and the first word only, pretty much actually, because there's so much loaded in that word, so much, that just hearing it and saying it can actually change your lives, says the Gemara. The word Shema literally means to, you can say it. Some people said listen, and some people said hear. Is there a difference?
Yes.
What's the difference between listening and hearing? One is
active, one is passive.
I like that. One is active, which is which, by the way?
Listen is active.
You think so? So my wife says, I told you something. I'm like, I'm listening. She's like, you're listening, but are you hearing what I'm telling you? By the way, that's my wife as a proof. I mean, you could bring someone else's wife as someone else's husband. I'm just telling you what happens in my house. The word Shema, there is no translation for it. It actually means a number of things. Number one, it means to listen, to hear, to understand, to obey, but also, something which none of you are aware of, because I wasn't until about 2 years ago, it also means to gather together. If you look at the word mentioned elsewhere in Tanakh, in scriptures, it means to gather. Now think about it, it makes sense, doesn't it? If you want to gather, someone's gathering their sheep, right? They are Shema, the sheep. I'm listening to my sheep, not much to listen to. What does that mean? You Shema, to gather together. Well, if you see something, you just boop, 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 you see it. It's there in front of you. The information goes from in front of you into your eyeballs, down those stalks, and into your brain. It's kind of like immediate. But when you hear something, you have to take one word, and then another word, and then you've got to gather those words together and make sense out of all of them. That's what you're doing, right? It takes effort. Saying the Shema isn't just an audible experience. It's not just a sight experience. It's a thinking, downloading experience. That's what you're meant to be doing. What's the proof that it's not just a sight experience? Because what do we do as children during the Shema? And there's no other prayer that I know of, or any other mitzvah that I know of, that you actually must do this, and that is to cover our eyes. It's weird, right? We do instinctively, we don't even think about it. When I say Shema, if that's your custom, is that your custom, the things we do, but we cover our eyes. Why do we do that? So the answer is, it helps us concentrate. Well, you don't concentrate any other time. I concentrate when I shake lulav and a drog. I concentrate when I make kiddush. No. Now you got to keep your eyes closed. Someone said so beautifully these beautiful words. If you want to see something, you got to look at it. If you want to see far, you half close your eyes, right? But if you want to see into the infinite future, the only way to do that is to close your eyes and think and understand it. That's the secret of this Shema. You're gathering some information. You're saying and expressing something. You've got to say it out loud. We said by the way, I don't we mention this? Every prayer that we say, you are meant to say loud enough for you to hear. That is halakha. Now the Zohar, according to Kabbalah, you don't. We don't paskin like Kabbalah. We don't usually go with it for the most part, most people. But the Shema says, if you want to, when you pray, even the silent Amidah, you should say loud enough that only you can hear but no one else can hear. That's the halakha when it comes to prayer, by the way. Why should that be? Because I can't reflect on something and be moved by it if I don't hear it myself. So I need to hear it. I need to understand. I need to download this idea. So Shema is Shin, Mem, Ayin. Shin, Shacharit, Mem, Mincha, Ayin, Arvit. So this is an all-day experience. I'm going to do it in the morning, and I'm going to do it in the night. And that's what it's actually a Torah mitzvah. It's the only Torah prayer that we do. All the other prayers are rabbinic in nature, even the Amidah. But it's an all-day thing. And you think the letters the other way. It's Ayin, Mem, Shin, Ol, Malchut, Shemayim. I'm accepting God at that moment. That is the perfect time to accept God. It's a little bit of the answer to what Rabbi Akiva was saying at that moment when he said, I've never managed to do this mitzvah properly, now I got it. Oh, I said, why are you being tortured to death? Yeah. Right now I'm getting this mitzvah. Shakrat mincha arvit, ol malchut shemayim. Here's the fascinating part. Shin, says the Kabbalah, is fire. Even the sound of it. Mem is water. Still waters. Ayin we'll get to in a second. Ayin actually has no sound. We'll get to that in a moment. Now let's think about those sounds. Because the Shema is not just a speaking experience or a seeing experience. It's also an audible understanding experience as well. So check this out. We have 3 sounds. We have a sh, and we have a and we have a ayin. It's actually meant to be guttural, but let's just go with a non-guttural and ah. Say the rabbis, when you just say that one word to your children, to yourself, twice a day, whatever you're saying it, you're actually connecting yourself to something much bigger than you realize. You're going shh, focus. I understand. I got it. That's actually what's happening while you're saying the Shema. Just that one word. Shh. Let's try this together. I know it's weird, and this is the bit I told you. Everyone close their eyes for just a moment. And we're going to focus on the shh, which is the fiery part. Explain more in a second. The m and the ah. Don't fall asleep on me. According to Rabbi Ari Kaplan, in what's actually between you and me one of my favorite books that actually changed my life, Jewish Meditation and Practical Guide. He was a real master in Kabbalah. It's a great book. I remember one of the first books I read when I reinvented my connection to God and Torah in my early 20s. He says the Shema isn't just a prayer. And if you treat it like that way, you're missing the entire point. It's connecting to God, but it's also a meditation. And Jewish meditation, I mean, I can't meditate because I know everyone's in meditation nowadays. I can't because my ADD just kicks in. I'm all over the place. Right? I'm bouncing off the walls. But one thing I know for sure is that I do meditate at least twice a day for a few seconds. That's all I can handle. And this is it. It's the sh, ah. Now, shin and mem are very interesting letters. First of all, they mean name. Shame. Shame. Your name. What does your name do? Your name identifies you. It gives you your unique character because there's only one you. Even people who have the same name are not the same as you because they have different names that surround them, that gave birth to them. You have different named parents and mothers and uncles and brothers and sisters. So your name defines you. The word for a soul is a neshama. I mentioned this before. The Hebrew letters in the middle are shem, name, because it gives you your identity in a very deep, soulful level. So when there's a lot of people around, you're just one of a crowd. But if I ask you your name, which is Adele?
Uh,
Adele.
Adela.
Adela. It's a beautiful name. I have an Adele in my family. I had 4 daughters with 2 names each. Chances were you'd end up being one of them. So very, very nice. Suddenly, you stand out from the crowd. Your name has identified you and your count, and you're all special. I didn't pick it up for any particular reason. It's a beautiful name. So that becomes you. It becomes your significant soul print. It's part of your neshama. There's something very much Adela about you, which I think means Adin actually. Okay. Now the word Shem, Shin Mem, also spells Sham. What's Sham? There. What's there? Or where is there?
Not here.
Not here, thank you. I know where there. What a ridiculous question. Where is there? I know it could be anywhere, but it's not here. So you go from the Shin, which is a letter of chaos. It's shh. It's all over the place. And you go to identifying myself with my name, and now I know that's where I want to be. That's why spirituality comes from the neshama, different levels of the soul, but the neshama is the highest one, because I want to be sham there. There's another word called shum. Shum means to evaluate. So once I know my name, my mission in life, and I know where I am, I can evaluate my position in this world. Shachrit, Mincha, and Arif, all day. And all Malchut Shemayim, I'm able to put God onto that picture as well. So that one word, Shema, is going to gather together a lot of information I wasn't even aware of. What's the ayin? What's the ayin? Well, the ayin actually has no sound. I mean, we vowelize it, we give it sound, but really, like an aleph, it has no sound. But it has a number. What's the number ayin? 70, right, 70. So you go from shh, chaos, fire, mem, according to Kabbalah, is water, and then you go to 70. What's 70? Who is 70? Where is 70? Anybody? 70? 70 souls went down to Mitzrayim. It's actually true. Shivim nefesh, 70 soul actually. 70 souls in the singular. But we talk about 70, what are we always talking about? 70 nations. Very good, yeah. Thank you. 70 nations. There's 70, now I know there may be 120. We watched the Olympics, we're like, is that really a country? Did someone check into that? I think it's really a country over here. Right? It's like 150 of them. But according to Judaism, there's 70 core nations that all other nations come out from. Right? That's why we bring 70 bulls and Sukkot, and make it the 70 powers, 70 nations of the entire world. So we take the chaos. We go to tranquility. And then we spread that throughout the entire world. That one verse, Shema, that one word, just the sounds of that one word. Impacts not just you and your family and your community, but the entire world, so the rabbis, is being impacted by those 6 special words. Maybe that's why that's one video. They got hundreds of thousands of views. And we can't understand what is the connection we have to those words. Yeah.
Shum also means garlic. What's the connection there?
Oh, I don't know. It does. It does. And actually, that's a word that appears in the Torah, actually. Shum is garlic. Maybe when you eat it, people stay away from you, all the other nations. I don't know. Before Yaakov died, he had a panic attack. He was very scared. Yaakov Avinu. What was he scared about? He was there, there's a tradition, we see in the Torah a number of times that, even to this day, people are surrounded by their families before they leave this world. It's a big zchut if a person's able to have this world, seeing children and grandchildren, maybe great-grandchildren, and please God by all of us in this Hashem. So Yaakov is there, on his deathbed, and he starts to freak out. What is he worried about? What's his concern? Well, he's got a concern about what happened to his grandfather and his father. What happened to his grandfather? His grandfather, Abraham, had a Yishmael, who went, at the end he did come back, which is an interesting story, and God willing, Ishmael and their descendants, the Arabs, will come back at the end as well. We'll leave that aside. Then his father Yitzchak had a Esav, that's Yaakov's twin brother, who also went off as well. So Yaakov is freaking out. He looks at all these boys, and he says, I'm nervous. I'm nervous that one of you guys are going to end up being just like what my grandfather was dealing with Ishmael and my father was dealing with when it came to Esav, and we're going to have a problem here. What did they respond? What did they respond? Anyone know? He had that panic. They turned around to him and they said, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. The words appear in the Torah not as a prayer, but as a statement, a declaration. Well, first of all, who are they talking to? Yaakov. Then why didn't they say, Shema Yaakov, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad? His name was changed. When was it changed? And why? He had a fight. He had a battle. He had a battle with an angel. Remember, he went back because he left some pachim katan, little vessels on the other side of the river. So he went back. He was alone, and we're told he got attacked. He had attacked and he wrestled with this angelic being. Now there's a big discussion in the Midrash and the Zohar whether this angelic being was good or bad. Ever heard this before? No? As a kid, you're like, well, which one was it? No! We're not going to conclude. It was either a good angel that was there praying to God, or a bad angel. If it was a bad angel, who was it? Anybody know? The Sar Shel Esav. It was Esav's angel. So before Yaakov actually met Esav physically, he met him in this battle. According to most commentators, this battle was not a physical battle. This was a battle that took place in his mind. It was a spiritual battle that he was involved in. He got damaged somehow in his leg. We don't need the Gid HaNasher. A whole different story. But one thing we need to focus on for a second is his name changed from Yaakov to Yisrael. And that's the word that they used when they spoke to him, his sons. What were they saying? Shema Yisrael, Israel, Yaakov, my father, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We're all involved. None of us, and he was right, they were right, they're very honest. We're all perfect. We're going to become the future tribes of the Jewish people, and your descendants are going to go right to Eretz Yisrael, and they're going to go to exile, because he was aware of that, and come back, and Yaakov even had a revelation at that moment of when Mashiach was coming. One of the few people we know of in history who knew when Mashiach was coming. He was actually going to tell his kids, but God said, no, not going to happen. And he wasn't allowed to do it. But he knew when Mashiach was coming. Him and one other person. Anybody know who else we know for sure knew when Mashiach was coming? Daniel the prophet. He of the lion's den. He knew when the Messiah was coming. Two people we know about. Some people say, well, obviously he knew, his father and grandfather knew. But we're not told that. But Yaakov knew it. So they were like, it's okay, it's going to be great, Mashiach's going to come, we don't know when, but you know when, and we're all involved, and we're going to stay Jewish and connected right to the end of Jewish history. So why call him Yisrael at that moment? Why does his name get changed? What's that about? I want to share an idea with you which is central to Emunah in general, because remember this is an Emunah series, which is taken more out of me, by the way, in preparing than any other series I've given in a number of years, I must admit. A lot goes into just thinking through this, because we try to avoid this topic, right? Can't we just do stuff and talk about, to fill in something? Or why bad things have the good people? That's so much easier than figuring out how I'm meant to really have faith in God when things are going well and things are going terrible. Yisrael means what? What does the word actually mean? We are the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel. I mean the children of Yaakov, because we all come from Yaakov, right? That's what we're called, the Bnei Israel. But what does the word Yisrael actually mean? Country? Nation? Olympic team? Somebody? What does the word actually mean? You can say it, don't be shy. Awkward. What does Yasha'er mean? Straight to God, yeah. Straight to God. That's encoded in it. Yasha'el, God is straight, yeah. You can look at it both ways. It does mean that as well. But that's a bit of a breakup of the word, a bit of a drush, but it's true, it does say that. We're the ones who go straight to God. But that's actually not the exact translation of the entire word. You know, if you just get this from me this evening, it was worth you being inside. I learned something from a rabbi tonight. I know what being a Jew is. Yeah, Yisrael is actually a really strange translation. The Torah itself defines it as he who contends fights with God. Anyone you got that? I didn't hear you.
I got it.
Great. Feel good? I didn't hear you say it. I apologize. Yisrael, I'm pleased you got it. He who fights with God. Wow. So what's your religion? Yeah, we like to argue. Yeah, we're the fighters. With who? Yeah, God. Actually, that's what we do. So 1 second. You're not the believers in God? Yeah, we do that as well on the weekends. But most of the time, we're B'nai Yisrael, we're the children of those who fight with God. Wow. Changes the whole perspective being Jewish, doesn't it? The word Yehudi, Jew, came much later. It came from Yehuda, right? But it wasn't Mordechai from the whole Megillah Purim story who started to use that name to refer to Jewish people in general. Yehuda, Yehudi, Yehuda, we give thanks, we admit. That's part of it. But actually, that's a little bit later. Before we were anything, we are the children who like to contend and argue with God. Now, how does that make you feel? And what's that got to do with faith in God? It's everything to do with faith in God. You see, in other religions and cultures, faith is, I submit. Whatever God wants, this is what I'm meant to be doing, and I'm not going to think about it. Blind faith. There ain't no blind faith in Judaism. Sometimes you have to give in, and sometimes we fight. There's one description, this is my favorite thing by the way, there's one description the Jewish people have as a characteristic national trait in the entire Torah that I know of. And I know what we're known as a people. Kashei Oref, stiff-necked people. Imagine that? Tell me, what's it like being Jewish? We fight with God and we're really stubborn. Good to be a Jew. That's basically who we are. That's our nation in a nutshell. By the way, that's an insult as well as a compliment. It's an insult because they're so stubborn. And they want to get a Jew to do something, or work with on a project, or give you 10% of the deal. Whatever you're dealing with. But it's also a compliment because sometimes a Jew could be doing the right thing and you try to pull him or her away, and they're like, no, because this is who I am. So it's not just a comment, it's not just a diss. It's also a good thing. This is who I am, and this is what I'm about. Kashei Oref, we're stiff-necked, we're like, right? It's like driving in Israel. Kashei Oref. Stiff-neckedness. You can't do that if you're relaxed. Driving in Israel is probably the greatest amount of faith a Jew can have. Driving in a taxi in Israel is even greater statement of faith that a person can have. And that's why the taxi driver in Israel always has a yarmulke in the glove compartment. And that's why the taxi driver and the rabbi go to heaven. And the taxi driver gets the same reward as the rabbi. And the rabbi says, it's not fair. I taught so much Torah, and he's drove people around. And God said, because the rabbi, when you spoke, everyone fell asleep. That's you doing your job. But when he did his job, everyone was praying. Emunah, I've come to realize, is not everything's going to be great and it's all fantastic, and it is what Emunah sometimes is, Yisrael. We have to fight and contend in order to make it happen. And this, by the way, is exactly one of the big elements of tefillah prayer. Prayer isn't just a meditative experience. Prayer actually, says the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and I'll show you the piece if you want to see it afterwards, is being noseh noten, which means doing business. You're meant to be bargaining with God. I want this. I need this. Come on. Come on. Can you do this, please? I want to get married. I want to make a lot of money. I want a good job. I want parents to be healthy. You're meant to fight. You're meant to fight for what you want. It's not just a matter of, it's all going to be good. Okay, there's elements of life which is Gamzu L'Tova. We spoke about it, Rabbi Kiva and Gamzu. Ish, Nachum Ish Gamzu. We spoke about them as well. But there's another element of faith. There's a lot going on with him, my friends. And that is fighting for what you want. And you see Avraham Avinu, he doesn't take a lot of things lying down. He took Yitzchak's sacrifice lying down. But when it came to other people, Sodom and Gomorrah, he's fighting arguing with God. He happened to lose that fight, but it was still worth having. And by the way, from that fight came Mashiach, by the way. Which is another story enough for now. Right? Because Lot was there and he saved him, and from him came Moab. And so even that prayer, no prayer gets wasted. It goes somewhere and does something. It may not result in a month or a year or 10 years. It may not come in generations. But eventually it turns up boop, somewhere, in some way. But we are Yisrael. And when it comes to building faith, we don't just it is what it is. You're like, no, I need to fight for this, because this is really important. And actually the only time, says the Gemara, that you're allowed to get angry, because anger is seen as a bad trait. Another series, another discussion. Except once, and that is when it comes to your beliefs. When it comes to what you believe in, fight for it. Especially when it comes to Torah and being proud of being Jewish. That even God himself gets angry sometimes, whatever that means. We are Yisrael. We are Akshanim. How do you translate the word Akshan? Stubborn, yeah. Right? Something about it. It's natural to be. That's our natural state. We don't. That's why every charitable organization, there's always a Jew involved. Save the dolphin, there's a Goldberg. Right? Save the penguin. Right? Save the trees. There's always a Jew up there on top, refusing to come down. Right? Save the. It's always a Jew involved. I'm not saying all these causes are good or right. Most are neutral. Some of them I'm against. But we are Akshanim. And that takes a faith. And that takes a level of faith. You have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was just thinking that it makes sense, the idea of listening with fighting or contending with God, because you would argue with someone or come and complain with someone who is listening.
Oh, that's right. I was who you talking to. Yeah, when you pray, let's think about it on a basic level. Just opening your mouth and pray. Just saying, shh. Right? You're saying three things. One, there's a God. Two, God listens to me, otherwise, why am I speaking? And three, God can do something about my situation, and why am I asking to help me? So just opening your mouth in prayer for once in your life, and that's maybe all it takes, is probably the greatest declaration that there is a God. Otherwise, who are you talking to? And why do you think he can help? If he can't do something about you, you're mortal. So absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
How do you find the balance between, like, quote unquote, fighting with God for what you want, and also accepting that, like, what someone's going to do is the best for them?
Okay, that's a very great question. The question was, I didn't hear it. There's a point when eventually you kind of like, it's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. You do what's called your hishtadlut, and then. So there's no one answer to that, and I've thought about this a million times. Some things you just keep going. You want to get married, for example, as I mentioned before, the longest, came to my head, I must say it, the longest prayer in the Torah is printed. There's actually a bit of somebody praying and asking for something is Eliezer asking God to find a shidduch for Yitzchak, Abraham's son. That can't be coincidence. That the longest prayer we see in the entire Torah, which is actually repeated twice, by the way, is asking for shidduch. Some things you don't stop till you get. Sometimes you got to know what your position is. Should you be praying for that particular person, that particular job, or to get a job? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It becomes complicated. The answer is, it's difficult to know, but you don't give up. Maybe the intensity changes, but you don't give up until you get it. You keep fighting, you keep pushing. Yisrael, Akshanim. Right? So you don't stop. Now, if you're hoping for one thing and one person praying for that, that's not good. Then already that's another problem, and you need to speak to your LOR to figure out, your local Orthodox rabbi, to figure out exactly where to put yourself in relationship to that thing, because maybe it's not meant to be. But no prayer gets wasted. Every tefillah goes and gets listened to. Sometimes the answer is no. That's also an answer, but God answers every single tefillah. But we're moving away from the main topic this evening. Just the act of prayer, specifically the Shema, is going to be the ultimate declaration of faith. And we'll finish with one last idea, because we've spent the entire time talking about one word, Shin Mem Ayin. And that is, if you look at the Shema in the Torah and Sidurim, the Ayin of Shema and the Daled of Echad are larger. The rest are times Roman 12, and those letters are 16. Ayin, Daled means aid, witness. This is the ultimate witness of God, i.e., of emunah, of faith, of declaration, that I am God's witness in this world, the real J witness, not the one that comes to my doorstep. We are the real J witnesses, and just those 6 words. If you're going to start with any prayer, 6 words twice a day, boom. Close your eyes, meditate. I'll go a little bit further if you don't mind. I'm sorry, I'm speaking a lot about this, but I have so much more to say. The Baal Shem Tov, and I've seen it elsewhere written, sometimes you get to a point where things come into your mind while you're saying those words. Sometimes those things aren't so good. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you're not a regular Shema sayer. But sometimes things which you maybe should have been thinking or seeing or reading or whatever will pop into your head during that short, powerful, meditative experience. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. If you start saying the Shema, it happens. Let me reassure you, if you've had it or if you will have it, it's going to sound weird, a good thing. And it's actually based upon a principle which we use in the world of kosher. Let's say you want to kasher your oven for Pesach. Right? We kasher it. How do we do it? What are we doing? We're taking out the taste that is inside the pot, the knife, the fork, the oven. How do you do that? You heat it up. You heat it up. And the level of heat you heat it up with is the maximum level of heat that existed when it took in that original flavor or taste. I'm summarizing all of the laws of kosher, but that's pretty much what it is. Okay? Kabbalah Kalpapoto is what the expression is. The way it went in is the way it comes out. If you use the oven on 500 is going to kasher it as well. Right? Whatever. Your mind is the same. There are certain times, says the Baal Shem Tov, when you are able to clear out your mind of negative thoughts, feelings, and understandings. When you do it, you get to see what comes out. Because up to that point, the non-kosher was embedded in the metal, in the knife, the fork. But when you kasher it, all that stuff is now being expunged. It's coming out of the oven, right? It's coming out of the grills, out of the knife, of the fork, the spoon, of the saucepan. Your mind is the same. There's one thing you can do to get all the schmutz out of your head. And sometimes you'll even see it as it comes out. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And that's during the Shema. You get to kosher your brain. I don't know if that means too much to you, but there's a lot of junk that goes in here, and I need to kosher my brain for a couple of seconds every single day. Twice a day, ideally. That actually says the Baal Shem Tov and others as well. With Kabbalah, you're cleaning out your mind when you say the Shema as well. So if you want to just kind of restart your head with a meditative experience of closing and focusing and gathering and clearing your head for the entire day ahead. So even if you're not a big prayer, I'm not a big prayer. Maybe you're a once-a-year Jew. If you're Sephardi, you're probably once a week Jew at least, hopefully, right? But every single day we have a mitzvah to pray. And the mitzvah to pray, by the way, as a side point, is just to talk to God for a second. You fulfill that mitzvah. It's actually what you need to do. I know we have a lot of tefillot. They are much, much later. Much later. All the Amidah and all the other stuff we have came 1,000 years after the Torah was given to us. It's actually bad we have that. Because real prayer is just meant to be talking to God. That's what it originally was and is still meant to be. Then everyone forgot to read Hebrew because we're in exile. So the Anshe Gadola, the Great Assembly, had to sit down and write it all out for us. It's good, it's worth saying. But we're missing out, and kids especially, I know. It's just speed reading. What a shame. I tell people, put the Siddur down and just talk to God. And they're like, I don't know how to do that. Oh, they can pray Shacharit, Mincha, Arvit, Musaf. They can read from the Torah. But just talk to God. And you're embarrassed? Hey, it's embarrassing. So do it privately when you're by yourself for 3 seconds. It's life-changing, life-affirming, and faith-building. I've overrun my time by a lot. We're going to stop over there. Thank you all so much for joining us on this journey. There is no second class. Rabbi Reuben Abragamov has a wedding, so he's eating well right now. Do not worry about him. We'll be back, God willing, next Monday night. Thanks, everyone.